for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polar Craft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, Brenton USA Hunting Rifles, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to another edition of the Outdoor Magazine radio show right here on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan, and glad to have you along with us. As we enter the Easter weekend, or wrap up the Easter weekend, depending on when you are listening to the show. It's been an interesting week weather-wise, hasn't it? As I'm sitting here in the studio right now, we just had some good storms come through. It's a really, really warm day. As I walked out the door this morning to come to the studio, a thought entered my mind. And the thought was, it smells like night crawlers out here. Now, I realize it probably doesn't smell like night crawlers. It just smells like fresh, warm, wet earth. But to me, it's like, it smells like night crawlers. I should be out picking up night crawlers. Well, no, because I don't use night crawlers for walleye. But when I was a kid, we used night crawlers for trout. And I remember on those warm, rainy nights going out there with a flashlight and searching for night crawlers. And I can tell you, as a kid, it was an adventure. It was almost as much fun as using those night crawlers to go fishing with, because you'd have to sneak up on them, right? They can feel your vibrations. If you come pounding up on them, they can feel that, and they're going to dive back down their hole. So you got to be sneaky. You got to be stealthy. You got to be quiet. So we take these old batteries that had, old flashlights that had 2 D-cell batteries in them, and they weren't very bright to begin with, right? Remember those things? You'd have to bang them off your hand to get them to work? So we take those old flashlights, and I wouldn't put the main beam on the crawler, right? You just try to put the edge of it on. So it didn't scare him, but you could see him. So you'd sneak up on those things, and you'd get ready. Okay, he's still out. Bam! You reach down there and grab him, and you squeeze him. And the minute you started to put some pressure on them, they would constrict, and they'd try to get back down that hole. So it would be a tug of war. 10-year-old Mike Avery's out there pulling on this night crawler. The night crawler's trying to go back down the hole. And I got a big smile, well, probably a grimace, because I'm trying to get this thing out of the hole. Sometimes they'd come, and you pick them up out of the hole, and you throw them in the can or whatever, the coffee can or whatever you had. And it's like, okay, there's one. And then sometimes you grab those things, there'd be a tug of war, and they'd rip in half. Like, oh, darn it, that one's gone. And then you had the whole thing of, okay, how do I keep these things alive for a few weeks? Bus bedding. Or ripped up newspapers. Shredded newspapers with some water. Any place you could put them where they could be warm and moist, preferably dark. That's a real art form. These days, most anglers are more likely just to go to the bait shop and pick up a dozen or 2 crawlers. But it was fun to pick, and you can still do them. Obviously, they're still out there. I just don't think many people do it. I don't, because I don't use crawlers for fishing anymore. And I'll tell you right now, over the next several months, I'm gonna have a lot of fun with the concept of not using those slimy, dirty night crawlers for walleye fishing. I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. It's a joke. It's a joke. That's the only time I'm going to officially admit it. It's a joke. Not meaning it's a joke for people to use night crawlers. When I talk about having disgust for night crawlers and not allowing them on my boat, well, I don't allow them on my boat. But I get it. I know night crawlers can catch fish. I just don't use them. And so because I don't use them, I make a big deal about it, and I have a lot of fun here on the radio show, and I tell my buddies, don't you sneak night crawlers on my boat, and we go back and forth, and it's a lot of fun. Every year I have people say, Avery, you are an elitist snob. I can't believe you talk about people who use night crawlers and you make fun of them. I'm not making fun of them. I'm making fun of myself, and I'm just having fun. And in today's world, shouldn't we strive to have a little more fun with all the junk that's going on? Well, I talked to Mr. Angler Quest the other day, Brad Dupuis, about my boat. He says, Mike, we're ready to rock. We're tweaking a couple of more things. One of them being the boat right now has a brand new 300 horse Mercury outboard on it. And Brad said, what do you think if we take the motor off your old boat and put it on this one? Because my old outboard has like 120 hours on it. It's just broken in. It's brand new, but it's just broken in. It would save me some time so I could just be ready to rock once I hit the water. I said, Brad, let's go for it. I'm fine with that. I'm completely fine with that. So he said, okay, you should have your new boat here very soon. What I'm hoping it doesn't do is the arrival of my new boat interfere with turkey season, because my turkey season's coming up here in just a couple of weeks. Is that true? I got to look at a calendar. Yeah, just a couple of weeks. I have ZZ, which is Southern Michigan private land, which the season goes from the end of April right on through May, through the end of mosquito season. I like it. It's a long season. It gives me plenty of opportunity, although I'd like to have the season wrapped up. I don't want it going into the end of May, because then I'll be ready to go on an Ontario bear hunt. In preparation for springtime turkey hunting, in preparation for a springtime Ontario bear hunt, I took my crossbow out the other day and I sighted it in. I got a new crossbow. I made a switch, got a new crossbow. I actually got a 10-point crossbow. I took the 10-point scope off it, and I put a Vortex Crossfire 2 scope that I had on my previous crossbows. I put it on that 10-point. So I had to start from scratch in dialing it in and sighting it in. And the interesting thing about that crossbow scope is you actually zero it at 40. It's not zeroed at 20. You can shoot it at 20. You have a 20 and a 30-yard reticle above the 40, but you zero it at 40 yards. And then you go back to 80 yards, and you shoot at the target. Now, don't get all riled up. I'm not about to shoot a turkey, a bear, a deer, or anything at 80 yards with a crossbow, because that's the knock. People say, well, no. The bow can shoot that far. I will not hunt that far. But the reason you shoot at 80 yards then, you look at your target and you see where did the arrow hit. And it's not a bolt, it's an arrow. Where did the arrow hit? If the arrow hit low, then you turn down the adjustment on your scope to a lower setting. If the arrow hits high, you turn the speed up. Now, speed and magnification, when you look at a crossbow scope and you look at the adjustment on it, a lot of people don't understand this. They think you're only adjusting the magnification, but what you're doing is adjusting that second focal plane so it lines up for the reticles, matching the speed of your bow. So in this case, I got it dialed in at about 350, which means it's shooting about 350 feet per second. It's advertised to shoot faster than that, about 350 feet per second. So now it's zeroed at 40. At 80, the 80-yard reticle hits right where it should be. So now my 20, 30, 40, 50, all those will line up directly, and you don't have to guess, okay, no, do I put it between this hash mark and this hash mark? No, it's right on now. So I'm ready to rock, and I'm actually pretty excited about it. I did try something, though. I bought have you heard of this? It's called Bog Pod, B-O-G-P-O-D. And what it allows you to do is lock your rifle or bow in while you're sighting it in and potentially hunting. I would never take this thing hunting. It's way, way, way too heavy. But for sighting in, it was nice because I could put the bow out there and get it lined up and then lock it in and pull the trigger and know that it was no user error on my part to sight it in. But I got to figure out something else to do because it is too heavy to hunt with. There's no way I'm lugging that thing through the woods. I've been keeping an eye on the local turkey population. You probably have been too. The big flock I've been seeing about a half a mile from where I'm planned to hunt opening morning has dispersed. I'm seeing a few birds out in that field, but those other birds are starting to work to the southeast, which is the direction I need them to go. So I'm pretty excited about that. We had a meeting the other night at my church, Trinity Monitor, a debriefing, an official debrief of our Trinity Monitor wild game dinner and auction. Many of you were involved in that, and the reason I'm bringing this up is I want to thank you for your support. We actually set a new record. It was the best one we've had yet. So thank you. If you were there in person joining us, if you were there, if you donated something to us, We appreciate your generosity, and you made that event a huge, huge success. This is Easter weekend, isn't it? A very special day of the year for me and others who believe like I do. I understand that we need to have the Easter bunny, and we need to have chocolate eggs, and we need to have the, all that, the Easter baskets and all that stuff. I understand that the kids enjoy that. And it's a lot of fun, right? Easter egg hunts, all that. I get it. But I'm going to ask you to keep something in mind. The real reason for Easter is not the Easter bunny or chocolate eggs or even Michigan brand hams. The real reason for Easter is something more. The real reason for Easter is to recognize and celebrate an empty tomb, resurrection, salvation. In the Christian faith, of which I am a member, this is the single most holy, the single most important time of the year, because it's what it's what paves the way for eternal life. If this offends you, I don't care. It's something I need to say because it's something I believe. Life can be hard these days. I could not get through life without some help, and I choose to look to that empty tomb for my help. So I would just ask you to keep that in mind. The real reason for this Easter celebration as you go throughout this weekend, keep that in mind, and I think your life will go a little better. Coming up after the break, Bryan Burroughs of Trout Unlimited, then Tony Smoker of Mad Hatter Jigs coming up in hour number 1 of this week's Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Manistee on WMLQ 97.7 FM. You can hear us in Flint on Sports Extra 1330 WTRX. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Iron Mountain on WMIQ 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Killer Food Plots, Michigan-based Killer Food Plots, your source for all things property management, wildlife, habitat improvement, and food plots. Get in touch with Rich Kazan. Go to the website, killerfoodplots.com, killerfoodplots.com. We're, I think, probably in all parts of the state now past the frost seeding season. Maybe not up north. But pretty soon it's going to be time to start turning dirt. If you're looking for seeds, if you're looking for advice, if you're looking for soil samples, Killer Food Plots can help you out. I'll try to get Rich here on the show in the next couple of weeks to help you get your food plot planting season off to a great start. Killerfoodplots.com is the website. While you're online, I would encourage you to go to my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Head on over to tu.org, the website of Trout Unlimited. Trout Unlimited, this nationally known organization for cold water fishing, started here in Michigan. Bryan Burroughs is the executive director of Trout Unlimited, and he joins us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Bryan, welcome to the show. How are you?
Oh, I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing great because it's springtime. That means fishing season. For these days, Bryan, it's mostly walleye for me. But man, when I was a kid, I remember Cedar Creek fishing for brook trout and browns, and it was so much fun. I mean, our state has such a rich history and tradition of trout fishing.
It really does. It really does. That's the reason I'm here, Mike. I'm originally from New Hampshire. I've been here for about 25 years now, and I came here because of the incredible fishing, and I've purposely stayed here because of all of the incredible fishing we have.
Tell me about TU, the history of this organization, and why you folks are here.
Yeah, so you nailed it a little bit. We were formed in 1959 in the state of Michigan by a group of people. Some of them were science researchers, some of them were businessmen, some of them were just average anglers. And at that time, the best new science in fisheries that was coming out of Michigan was learning that if you have good quality habitat, the fish can reproduce and sustain themselves at a thriving level on their own. And that seems pretty basic to us now, but prior to that moment, a lot of the focus in fisheries management was stocking fish, kind of put and take fisheries. And so Trout Unlimited formed out of a recognition that we had all of these incredible rivers and incredible waters, and some of them had a lot of problems. But it was this drive to say, hey, we have incredible ingredients, and if we focus on doing some restoration and some improvements, our fisheries can be, way better than they are. And so the organization formed in about 1959. And it was kind of modeled off of Ducks Unlimited. Actually, one of the founders had been on the board of Ducks Unlimited and said, what we really need here is another organization like Ducks Unlimited, but focused on cold water fisheries. And from that point, it was created. It started off in Michigan, but the idea and the value proposition of TU resonated with people, anglers in all different states, and said, yeah, we really need this in action in our state. So the organization went through a period of kind of growing where they were, some of the Michigan leaders were invited all across the country. And pretty quickly it became a national organization with chapters all over the country. And today, Trout Unlimited is, I believe, the largest fisheries conservation organization that we have. I think we are nationally have about 400 chapters, and we're up to over 300 employees, full-time employees spread across the country. And we keep getting bigger and bigger. And in Michigan, we have about 20 chapters. We have our Michigan TU, which is kind of our state council of TU. And there are currently 3 full-time employees at Michigan, but we have other TU national employees in the area. We have, between Michigan and Wisconsin, I think we're up to about 12 or 13 employees. And we have great chapters that are out doing projects locally. We have staff people who are trying to tackle and support them, but the local projects, but we're also adding larger and larger projects all the time. And honestly, right in this moment, there seems to be no end in sight to the work that we need to get done and the support to help get us there.
I find it interesting that some 65 years ago or so, when the organization was formed, there was a need for habitat restoration and improvement. I think of that as almost a more recent problem. What was it back then, Bryan? Was it pollution? Was it agricultural runoff? Was it erosion? Because a lot of the rivers were logging rivers years before. What were the main concerns, and how have you guys, can I say, solved them?
Yeah, well, we're working on solving them. We're not there yet, but we've made an incredible amount of progress, but there's still a ton left. So actually, Mike, you kind of got to go back to the earlier days of Michigan, and it's important to remind folks that Michigan had this incredibly important time and waves of development that made Michigan what it is, but the scars that were left from that were pretty incredible. So again, you go back long enough, and the vast majority of our forest had been logged. And not only were they logged, and they were logged in a day where, forestry science was not as developed, right? So they weren't the kind of modern clear cuts that we do now. It was logged in a crude way. The landscape was kind of devoid of forest in a lot of Michigan. And we also sent and floated most of those logs down our rivers. And so you can just imagine hundreds of thousands of large trees, white pine logs being, floated and flooded down rivers. And some of the photos that are still available of that, it was just catastrophic. I mean, it would have bashed up everything and just, really done a lot of damage to our rivers. And then we went through a period of time where things started to regenerate a little bit. And we had a period of time where there was massive forest fires across Michigan. And again, some of the historical photos of, up north, lower peninsula, they're unrecognizable. There are pictures of, Model Ts, parked in front of what looks like a desert of sand with root wads from trees 3 or 4 feet up in the air. because of all of the erosion that happened. Honestly, there was a period where there was a lot of sheep farming around, and there was just a lot of large-scale damage. And we did go out of that period, and things started to recover, but some of the scars that were left from that are still around today. And then we also, right about that time that the logging ended, we started building dams all over the state of Michigan. Right now, we know that there's at least about 3,000 dams on our river systems, and we needed those for a lot of reasons. But we also learned through time that dams really have some fundamental negative impacts on rivers. In our state, one of the biggest ones is, the most obvious, is that they prevent fish from getting up and upstream and downstream to all the habitat types that they need. But in Michigan, most of our dams also warm the water. So you think about our trout streams, and each one of our dams can be warming water from, as little as a degree, but we've been finding ones that are warming our rivers in the summer by 13 degrees on average in the summer. And then we have all these road crossings, right? We built roads across all of our streams, and nothing wrong with that either. But again, back in that period of time 50 years ago, people didn't know everything that, we could have hoped that they have known. So instead of, if a river was 40 feet wide, instead of paying the money to build a bridge over it, we would just put in the smallest, cheapest metal pipe, maybe two of them that are 5 feet wide, and that would cause problems and prevent fish passage. So in a lot of ways, we did such kind of catastrophic damage to our rivers, where you and I now go out and they're beautiful and they are very healthy, but to the trained eye, you can still go out and find, everywhere you can find a lot of legacy problems that are preventing our rivers even today from being as good as they could be. And we're right now in a moment where we are having new challenges that we've never seen before with some of the invasive species, including trout stream invasive species like Didymo and mud snails. And we're learning more about different insecticides in our rivers. We're getting different flow patterns and temperature patterns with some of the weather that we're having. And so the work is endless. Cold water fish require really healthy, intact, good functioning stream habitat. And the pressures are mounting, and we still have a lot of old work to address, and we have some new challenges to address. So we are always very busy. No matter how many strides we've made, there's a daunting amount of work in front of us. But we know the work, and we can do the work.
Well, quickly before we go to break here, how would you characterize the state of trout fishing in Michigan today? Are we on a high point, a low point? What?
Well, I think that we're, relatively speaking, at a pretty high point because of a lot of the recovery that we've had over the last couple of decades. I mean, Michigan puts up a trout fishing portfolio and trout, salmon, and steelhead portfolio like nowhere else in the country. I think we have the best blend of the salmonids. We have some of those Pacific salmons. We have good steelhead and salmon, but our brown trout fishing and brook trout fishing is incredible. And when you think about all of those together, I don't think there's another state in the U.S. that has as much of a cold water portfolio as we do.
Bryan, that's good to hear. And I hear that with so many different types of species and critters. I mean, we're blessed to live in such a great state. We're talking with Bryan Burroughs. He's the executive director for Trout Unlimited here in Michigan. We've got to take a break here on the Outdoor Magazine Show. When we come back, I want to wrap up the conversation with Bryan, talking a little bit more about this. I want to get some of his thoughts on fishing and the different types of fishing. Also, what does TU think of the DNR's plan to reintroduce grayling? Is that a good thing for trout, or is it a bad thing? We'll talk with Bryan Burroughs about that and more. The website for Trout Unlimited, tu.org. TU stands for Trout Unlimited. I was very lucky to meet one of the founding fathers of Trout Unlimited. In fact, Art Newman made me a fly rod. He made it specifically for me. And you know what the shame of it is? I've never taken it out to the river to use it. I know that is an absolute crime, and it is a shame, and I'm embarrassed. I admitted it, but I'm embarrassed. Bryan Burroughs of Trout Unlimited, tu.org, after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. Outdoor Magazine show in Alpena on WZTK 105.7 FM. You can hear us in Holland on WHTC 1450 AM and 99.7 FM. You can also hear us north of the bridge in Newberry on WNBY 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Rapid River Knife Works. And you know, always I have a Rapid River knife in my pocket. I reach for that thing multiple times a day. And it's so funny. I'll be talking to people say, hey, oh, look, you really do have a Rapid River knife in your pocket. Yeah, because I wear a pocket clip on it and you can see it. I have much respect for this company. They make handmade knives, lifetime guarantee, made right in the UP. Go to the website, rapidriverknifeworks.us, or stop by their showroom on US 2, just east of Rapid River, and you'll see what I mean. rapidriverknifeworks.us. Also want you to check out TU.org. TU.org is the website, the national website for Trout Unlimited. We're talking with Bryan Burroughs, who is the executive director of TU for Michigan. Bryan, I was thinking during the break here that, I think some of our trout species in Michigan, aren't even native. Like brook trout is native, right? But browns are not. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Although it is correct. Brook trout are native to, I guess they're accepted as native to the Upper Peninsula, and then there's certain, limited historic accounts of them in the Lower Peninsula. Brook trout are native, lake trout are native, and then a lot of our other species were introduced. So brown trout, we were actually the first state in North America to have brown trout planted. And so kind of interesting, but some of our brown trout have been here for as long as they've been anywhere in North America. But yeah, when you get into the steelhead, the king salmon, coho salmon, we have pink salmon, those are all introduced species. I tell people we have one of the best cold water fishery portfolios of anywhere, but we're also sort of a melting pot.
Do you think of yourselves as an organization for fly fishermen only, or do you welcome the worm dunkers as well?
Oh, gosh, yeah, we don't really separate. And I know there's, maybe different perceptions from the outside, but actually, in our bylaws or our mission and philosophy of our organization, we're really just focused on trying to make great places and take care of cold water fish. So we really actually don't speak about fishing that much in our philosophies, other than to say, take care of the fish and the fishing will take care of itself. And so, no, we don't really have any kind of focus on which type of fishing techniques you use. We're an organization for people who want a system and an outlet to try to help take care of all of them.
Are you focusing mainly on inland fisheries, or do you get into the Great Lakes as well?
Yeah, so I would say it this way. We're heavily vested on the inland fisheries, and that's where we do a lot of our on-the-ground restoration work and assessments, research, and we do restoration projects themselves. But we constantly are involved also in our Great Lakes fisheries. We often do not do kind of hands-on restoration, but we keep track of and are very engaged in how the populations are doing, and we engage in different policy and advocacy to try to help support those as well.
Yeah, because a lot of our river fisheries, they depend on, I don't know, do you look at steelhead and coho and salmon runs? Are they, under your, I don't want to say purview, but something you're interested in?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, yes, we keep track of all of those and how things are going, what investment, what research is being done, how they're being managed. And, steelhead right now are a great example of that, where, we don't have all the great data that anybody wishes we had on some of those, but there are the information that we do have has shed quite a bit of concern over how the steelhead populations are doing in Michigan right now, and that's an increasing focus for DNR, Michigan Steelheaders, TU, MUCCs is a concern over how those different populations of Great Lakes fish are doing as well.
You talked about invasive species earlier, and I realized the grayling is actually not an invasive species, but a native species. But the plan to reintroduce grayling, does that affect that local trout population in that river in any way? Is it a negative, a positive, or does it really not even matter?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Biologically, we don't expect the grayling to be a negative impact on the existing cold water community. It could. Nature is a complex thing, and who knows, maybe there may be some other change to sculpins or something. But generally, grayling are not going to be, they're not thought of as strong or as an aggressive competitor for like brook trout or brown trout or even the steelhead or salmon. And so we're not too worried biologically that grayling could have an impact on those. I think there are some concerns about just how humans may view grayling and whether that may lead to some impact. So essentially, if you really champion getting grayling thriving in a stream, and somebody says, hey, the brown trout are actually competing and are a problem for grayling, it's people themselves that may choose to say, hey, we want to get rid of brown trout. And that is a concern that's more likely than the biological.
Sure, and you've always got to take the people into account and the social impact of that as well. Bryan, listen, I appreciate your time. Bryan Burroughs of Trout Unlimited. He's the executive director of Trout Unlimited for Michigan. The website for TU nationally is tu.org. That's tu.org. Bryan, appreciate your time. Good fishing to you.
Hey, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure. Keep up the good work, Mike.
Thank you. Appreciate that. The pleasure is mine. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. When we come back, we're going to make a massive switch here from basically fly fishing for trout to jig fishing for walleye. I know it's both fishing and they're both fun. We'll talk with Tony Smoker of Mad Hatter Jigs right here on Outdoor Magazine. The Outdoor Magazine Show in Battle Creek on WBCK. That's 95.3 FM. You can hear us in Tawas on WIOS 1480 AM, 106.9 FM. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Marquette on WDMJ 1320 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Michigan-based Boning Archery. Boning, a leader in the archery industry since 1946. They still continue to come up with great products. In fact, this new crossbow rig I have, I took out one of the first things I did was take off the quiver that came with the crossbow and put a Boning quiver on there because I want to use Michigan product whenever possible. Michigan-based Boning Archery, a leader since 1946. They continue to innovate and come up with new products. Check out their website, boning.com. That's BOHNING.com, boning.com. Well, I've never fly fished for trout. I've done stories on it, but I've never actually done it, referring back to our previous conversation with Bryan Burroughs of Trout Unlimited. But I have jigged for walleye, and I know what jigs are. Tony Smoker is the guy behind Mad Hatter Jigs. You can find him on Facebook, and he's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Tony, welcome to the show. How are you?
Good. How are you, Mike? Good morning.
Good morning. I'm doing real well. I appreciate you joining me. So tell me a little bit about your company, Tony.
What I do is I make a variety of jigs. I specialize in walleye jigs. That's my main squeeze. I make a lot of walleye jigs. I make anything from 1/16 up to 1.5 ounce. I can even get a little heavier if you're looking up to a 4 ounce. I use the best products I can find that are made in the U.S., made in America, made in USA. I use the best hooks I can find. I do a lot of research on my builds before I build them. I look for good quality American-made stuff. That's one key to my successful builds is I use American-made, good quality stuff.
Well, what makes one jig different than another? Because I'm thinking, okay, it's a piece of lead with a hook on it. You drop it to the bottom. I mean, a jig is a jig, or not.
Well, we'll just say this. Never try to recreate the wheel with a jig shape. I am old-fashioned. I believe in the good old round ball. The round, they're basic. I can feel them. A lot of guys like the walleye jigs. They have a little different shape. They're kind of an arrowhead, a smushed arrowhead of a round ball. A lot of guys like them. Mm-hmm. Some guys like the ultra minnows or even the swim bait or other shapes. I guess to me, I like to use what works for me. I like the good old-fashioned round ball. the majority of the jigs to me, realistically, Mike, they're an art board to me. I have a new jig that I call the Medicine Man. It's the teardrop jig. And I really believe that jig is the next hit. That jig is hot. It's like a round ball. It's kind of squeezed into a teardrop. You come out with a wire bait keeper. It's a lot more friendly to a guy's rubbers. It's not going to blow out your winded out worms, visually speaking, or anybody else's rubber worm. It's got a single wire bait keeper, and it has the eye socket feature where I can stick eyes on the side.
Well,
it's pretty much like a round ball, but it's a teardrop. I call it the Medicine Man because it looks like a pill. It's a teardrop.
So it's got the weight of a round jig, but it's got a little different shape, so maybe it drops through the water better. Is that the thinking, Tony?
I think so. I can feel them. I can only feel a round ball and the Medicine Man. I've tried fishing my walleye style jigs. I've tried fishing for, say, a bottom feeder or an ultra minnow, and honestly, I cannot feel them on the bottom of the Detroit River myself.
So what about color? Color's got to be what really sets them apart then.
Color, yes. There's bright colors and dark colors. You got dark days and bright days. I move a lot of dark colors and a lot of bright colors. A lot of guys say colors just for show, to catch the fishermen. But realistically, some of these colors really do catch the fish, guys. I mix a lot of my own colors. I call myself the King of Bling, the Walleye King, because I mix a lot of my own colors myself, and they sparkle. They sparkle like a diamond, man.
Well, I was on your Facebook page, Mad Hatter Jigs, and I see some that too. It looked like they got a great big old eye painted on both sides of them. What's the thinking there, Tony?
The eye, they're just bigger. I like the big eye sockets. You can see them. Whether a fish can really see them, some guys say red eyes are the ticket. All the old guys, red eyes, you know. I try to match my eyes to the colors I paint, kind of like pinstriping your car, figuratively speaking. My color array of eyes that I use, I just use them to match my paint, to match what I'm building for guys. And guys love them. Guys are catching fish with them. But back to the old guys, the old guys like red eyes. And the bigger the eye, the more the fish is going to pick up the eye presentation, maybe, is the theory of it all.
What do you think of, what's your philosophy on the size of the jigs? You know, some of the old timers would say the lighter the better. Now the younger guys are going, heavy enough to hit the bottom. What are you thinking real quick before we let you go? Realistically,
lighter the better. The less weight the fish is going to feel in his mouth is going to feel more natural. I mean, what does an actual minnow really weigh, guys? Has anybody threw a live minnow on a scale yet?
Well, I personally haven't. All right, Tony, listen, I appreciate your time. Good luck to you. I love Michigan-based companies. Tony Smoker of Mad Hatter Jigs. You can find him on Facebook, and it's MADDHTR, Mad Hatter Jigs on Facebook. We'll take a break here for the top of the hour. When we come back, we're going to talk about a springtime tradition here in Michigan. Is it time for that tradition to kick off yet? Well, maybe not where you are, but it will be soon. That's Morel Mushrooms here on Outdoor Magazine.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polar Craft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, Brenton USA Hunting Rifles, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Indeed, this is the big guy, Mike Avery. Thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to hour number 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show right here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network, heard on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan. Yes, first and foremost, this is a syndicated, Michigan-based, outdoor-oriented radio show. And I think the best way to listen, if you can, is on your local radio station. You get your local news and weather and sports, and the radio stations get the content before the podcast version is uploaded. So if you can, please listen on your local AM or FM station. If you can't, if your local station doesn't carry all 3 hours of the show, or if you live in some part of our state, God forbid, not covered by the broadcast signal of the radio show, you can always listen to the show as a backup, as a podcast. You know, I kind of joke around about this, but, you know, everybody's got a podcast. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of Michigan-based, outdoor-oriented podcasts in existence these days. And they're very, very good. Many of them are excellent. They're outstanding. But there aren't very many syndicated outdoor radio shows on the air. So that's why I make that distinction. If you need to listen to the podcast version, you can hear it just about anywhere. On my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com, on my Facebook page, Amazon Music, Audible, Twitter, LinkedIn, yada, 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 TuneIn, Stitcher. Yeah, you've heard the whole rundown before. I even put it on YouTube, so you can watch/listen to it on YouTube. Speaking of podcasting, though, sometimes I come across as a guy who's not a big fan of podcasting, but I am. Podcasting is a wonderful venue, a wonderful option, a wonderful outlet for anybody, you included, to reach an audience. If you have a story to tell, if you have information to get out there, you can start a podcast these days, honestly, with nothing more than your phone. You can record it on your phone. You can upload it from your phone. So I do love podcasting. In fact, I do podcasts every month for Offshore Tackle, Angler Quest Boats, Primal Outdoors, and Polar Craft Boats. And when we get done here in the studio, Charlie and I will record this month's Offshore Tackle podcast. Regardless, though, of how you are listening to my voice, when you are listening to my voice, whatever show, podcast, whatever you're hearing, I do certainly appreciate it. I would not be able to do this without your support, and I genuinely appreciate it. You know, this is a wonderful time of year here in the great state of Michigan. Although as we're sitting here in the studio right now, we had some pretty good storms come rolling through. But those are cool too, right? Mother Nature showing her power, her dominion. I like that. I like it when the weather gets a little bit challenging and we are once again reminded that we are not the most important thing here. There are bigger things at work, in play here than just us. And I think the weather often helps us remember that. The weather also plays a huge role in our outdoor activities. For example, it needs to be warm, and we need to have some moisture for mushrooms to pop. I was just looking at my Facebook page, and somebody sent me a Facebook message, and that's a good way to reach me. A better way is to send me an email, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. But a picture of very tiny morel mushrooms on April 4th out of Oakland County. So it's starting. Nobody knows that better than Michigan's morel master. His name is Clay Edney, and he joins us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Clay, welcome back. How you doing?
Thanks, sir. Glad to be back again.
Always a pleasure. Listen, if I'm getting reports of morels, I know you are as well.
Yeah, I know exactly what that picture was you're talking about. That's Billy Walters out of Oakland County. I think last year he was the first guy to find him last year, too.
So this is kind of his thing.
Yeah, he's pretty good at it.
What makes a good mushroom hunter?
Dedication. Get out there early, because everybody else thinks that the mushrooms don't grow until May.
Well, yeah, I used to think, Mother's Day, that's the time to go looking for mushrooms.
Exactly. A lot of people say that, Mother's Day weekend. Well, by then, you've missed all the black season. And plus, Michigan's a pretty big state from top to bottom. So it always starts down here in the lower, and it always beats Indiana for the most part. And then it just works its way up through the state.
You say if you start late, you've missed the black season. What does that mean?
The black morels are the first ones that come up. And they're a cold mushroom. They like the cooler weather. So, like, the last, Friday, Thursday, it was kind of warm. And then, it got cold, but then it got warm. So, Sunday, I'm sitting there watching the sights, and then here it goes. Little ones. They've got little micro environments in our area. And then that's how it gets them going.
How many different kinds of morels are there?
Well, there's different colors. I don't know about how it really goes, but colors. There's blacks, which is the first ones. There's half-freeze. There's grays. Yellows or whites, what people call them. And then I also added on a tulip morel, which is the smaller yellows that grow at the end of the year.
Man, I feel like you got to be a scientist or a botanist to go mushroom picking.
No, anybody can do it.
Where do you find them? Where do you start? Where do you look, Clay?
Well, first for the blacks, you find your tulip, the tulip poplar, which is a hardwood, your cherry, your ash, poplar grows. You want to start looking through there. You know, you'll find a mixture of poplar and cherry, or definitely look for your ash trees.
Well, that's getting harder and harder to find.
Yeah, yes, it is. You still get your tulip poplar, which is in the lower Michigan, and then the cherry, ash, or poplar grows is a really popular area for them.
So why do you look for trees, though? What's the correlation between trees and mushrooms, morels?
Morel and trees is everything. You can walk around in the woods and not be around the right trees, and you're never going to find them. And there's something to do with they're in the roots or in the tree, and that's how they grow. It's a mysterious thing, but this is how it goes.
So I wonder, is it that certain type of tree creates the right environment for the mushroom, or is it that the mushroom and the tree both want the same thing, so you find them in the same place?
I think they want the same thing.
But yet, I know from talking with you in the past, if you get a tree that falls down and dies, then that can provide a good spot. I don't know if it's the nutrition or what coming out of that rotting wood, but it also makes a good microcosm for morels sometimes too, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's more like the yellows. You'll get the elm tree. The elm tree will start to die. Then the morels will start popping. So they're feeding off the nutrients of the tree until that tree completely breaks down to nothing, and then the morels will just stop. People think they overpick a spot for the grays, or the yellows, but actually that tree just dies off, and then it just kind of goes to the next tree.
Can you overpick a spot?
It's hard to believe that you could on the blacks. I've been picking black spots for the last 30 years, the same spot, same area. People are picking them in the same areas that I'm picking them in for the last 20 years. And it'd be hard to really, unless it gets clear-cutted or something like that, then they're still growing. I can go to areas and always find them in the same spot.
Even 30 years later, I would think that the environment the environment has changed, and it would make conditions wouldn't be as conducive to having those mushrooms.
The trees get a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
The trees just a little bit bigger, but the blacks, you're always going to find them in that same area for some reason. But like I say, the grays they grow around the white pine, and then the yellows are elm and ash. And then, the elms will die off, and then you got to find new trees to pick.
So if you go back to the same spot year after year, I mean, that's a honey hole. That's good knowledge to have right there.
Exactly.
And do you share that information publicly, Clay?
No, not public. My son knows all my spots. I think he's probably the only one that knows every spot I go to.
Well, in that regard, you are a hardcore mushroomer. That's what mushroom people do, is they hide. I don't want to say they hide these spots, but they cherish this spot and they don't give out this information.
Right. And truthfully, our areas are so small that there's people going in there and you're just not seeing them. Or I've been in spots and people walk right up and come right down the same spots.
Do they come to that spot because they know you and they know your reputation, or this is their honey hole as well?
Yeah, it's probably their honey hole, people I don't even know.
Are morel hunters a pretty friendly group? I mean, if you're in your honey hole and a guy walks in on you, is that going to cause a problem, or is this, hey, buddy, how you doing type of thing?
And kind of maybe, hey, buddy, how's it going? I mean, I've never had any bad experience.
Good. We're talking with Clay Edney. I call him Michigan's Morel Master. And if you go to his Facebook page, you're going to know what I'm talking about. He's Michigan Morels on Facebook. Michigan Morels. It is, in my opinion, the definitive source for all things mushroom hunting in Michigan. Clay posts regular updates of where the morels are being, what part of the state. He's not going to give you honey holes because the people who submit pictures to him aren't going to give you the lat-long coordinates or GPS coordinates. But, they'll tell you what county they're in so you can see the progression as it works farther north. We've got to take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, I want to talk more about mushroom hunting with Clay Edney, Michigan's Morel Master, after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Carroll on two stations, WKYO 1360 AM and WIDL 92.1 FM. You can hear us in Sandusky on WMIC, also two stations, 660 AM, 95.3 FM. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Manistee on WTIQ 1490 AM, 95.3 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Whack-'em and Plack-'em, a Michigan-based company. Very cool, unique way to show off your trophies. Use them with shoulder mounts, European mounts, even fish. For details, check out the website nontypicalinnovations.com. That's nontypicalinnovations.com. I would ask you to support these Michigan-based smaller companies. Jason does a great job there. Nontypicalinnovations.com. Although I don't think you could use, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think you could use a Whack-'em and Plack-'em to show off your morel trophy. And I bring up morels because we're talking about mushroom hunting with Michigan's Morel Master. His name is Clay Edney. His Facebook page is Michigan Morels on Facebook. That's Michigan Morels on Facebook. And I was just saying as we started out the top of this hour, I just got my first picture sent to me of a southern Michigan morel taken on the 4th of April. Clay, is Michigan kind of a hot spot for morels, or do we find them all across the country?
All across country, all 50 states. It starts in February in Georgia, and it works its way across and all through the year.
Starts in the southern part of the state here in Michigan, works their way north, I assume.
Yep. Usually it's been from either mid-March, late March. It's a little bit earlier than last year. Usually April 15th is about average when it starts down here.
And could you chase them later in the season all the way up into the UP?
Yes, you can, all the way. Usually what we used to do is get them down here for 2 weeks, then go up to Baldwin, and then go up to Jordan River Valley for Mother's Day weekend, and then go for Memorial Day weekend, we go to the UP and pick them.
So what do you do with them once you get them? I mean, I know you eat them, but how do you store them? How do you cook them?
Well, what I do is I'll get them home. I'll cut them in half, check for bugs. I stop soaking my mushrooms. A lot of people say soak them with water and salt. I stopped soaking my mushrooms because they turned to, when I had a batch, turned to mush and soured on me. So I stopped doing that. And then for cooking purposes, I butter sauteed with a little salt, just slowly cook it down, cook the water out of the mushroom. And then if you want to keep them the way I keep them, fresh, as fresh as I can, is what I'll do is I'll cook them halfway down until you start smelling them. Put them in a freezer lock, let it cool down, put them in a freezer lock, lay it flat, and put it in your freezer. And then when you get ready to eat them, take that freezer bag out, unthaw it, pour everything back into the pan, and then finish cooking it down slowly. That's the best way I found to do it.
So you freeze them with the juice?
Juice everything. Pour everything right into the bag.
Huh. You talked about cutting them in half, too. I mean, yeah, that's important to do to check for bugs, but also it's a great way for a novice to make sure he's actually got a true morel, right?
Yep. Because when you cut it into a true morel, it's hollow completely top to bottom, and usually it's white inside. And then a false morel will be an umbrella. The top will sit right on top of the stem, and usually there's cotton in the middle, like a cotton fiber white.
Can you pull that cap off a false morel then? Is it two pieces or is it still one piece?
It'll be, it'll come right off.
Okay.
If you hit it, it'll just pop right off.
So
It's only attached at the tip.
I mean, understandably so. Some people are concerned about going in the woods and picking up something growing that's actually a fungus, I think, and then eating it. Is there any danger there at all, Clay?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you've never ate a morel, you can be allergic to them. There's a possibility. If you don't know, I mean, if you're really a starter out, don't know what a real mushroom morel is, have somebody help you, find somebody that has some knowledge, make sure it's good. If it's your first time, eat a little bit, make sure you don't get stomach cramps, get sick, and then go from there.
Because, morel is non-poisonous, but yes, some people are allergic to it. But some of the mushrooms actually have a reputation as being kind of poisonous, don't they?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's a lot of mushrooms I don't know about. I don't touch them. There's a lot of fall morels that you can pick that are edible. There's some other spring mushrooms you can pick. Oyster mushrooms are good.
Best advice, if you don't know what it is, don't eat it.
Yep, exactly. And then if you got questions, find somebody. Send our page a message and ask. But you got to have it cut in half. That's the most important thing. You cut that mushroom in half, and if it's hollow all the way through, then it's more than likely a true mushroom.
You said send your page a message. So I like this. Again, Clay Edney, we're talking with Michigan's Morel Master Clay Edney, and his Facebook page is Michigan Morels on Facebook. You're saying, Clay, if somebody has a question, they could post a picture to your page or send you a message with a picture of this thing, and somebody will answer it?
Yes, sir.
Oh, that's a great resource. That's a great resource. I appreciate you helping people out like that.
Yeah, and then we have posts on it. If you look through the posts, we have pictures of trying to show you what a real morel is, or what's fake, or what's bad, or what's good.
What about? I hear people say, "Oh, when I take them out of the woods, I take them out in like an onion sack or something, so I can let the spores hit the ground again." They say don't ever put them in a plastic bag? Any truth to that?
Yeah, I mean, everybody can argue their own argue. If I was anybody, I wouldn't use the onion bags, because what I've noticed, especially if you start getting into the big yellow ones, they'll grind the morels as you carry it. It'll grind it down. So if you're going to do a mesh bag, do a soft mesh bag. Bigger. If you get lucky and find a lot of the big yellows, you don't want to put a lot of weight on it, because it'll just crush them down. I mean, if I go out, I'll grab a bag, a hat, and if I know I'm going to find a lot, I'll bring a bigger bag.
Well, are there days when you go out and say, "Look, this is a good day. I can feel it," or this spot, or the weather, or something? Are there days you go out and say, "It's going to be a good day. I'm going to get a ton of morels today"?
Oh yeah, for sure. The next couple of days, I mean, it's pouring down rain right now in Kalamazoo, and the next 4 days look great, and there's going to be a lot of mushrooms getting found.
Okay, so what's the key? You and I have talked about this before. When I walk through the woods, I have a hard time seeing morels. I know I'm walking past morels. What's the key? Do I get down on my knee? I mean, what am I looking for?
Yeah, I mean, I'll stand there and try to look out in front of me, or try to just look and get down. Maybe if it's an area that I know for sure there's mushrooms, I'll get down, look, turn around, go side by side. Then once you see that first morel, then your eyes will focus more on that, and then you'll be able to see them, especially with the blacks. They're harder to find. When you get into the big yellows, and they kind of stick right out, like a sore thumb.
When you go into a patch, will you pick everything that's popped up out of the ground, or will you save the little ones and come back and get them later?
Depends on if I'm in state land or county parks or something. I'll pick them all.
And then,
I won't pick babies, but I'm going to take a 2-inch black morel is a good mushroom.
So, say you're in a spot that somebody else might pick, and so you take them all. When would you come back, or maybe one of your good private spots? How long will you give a spot before you'll come back and pick it again?
2 days.
Oh, just 2 days?
2 days and recheck it. Yeah.
Wow.
The mushrooms are there. You pick them. They're going to grow the next night. So you come back in 2 days, well, they've grown for a day or two. And then depending on the weather, everybody says, well, they yes, they do grow. For 7 days, they can grow. And then the blacks will pop up. They'll grow a couple inches, but it's like a balloon. You blow up a balloon. What size is it when you start? And you blow up a balloon. Well, how much bigger is that balloon now? They keep spreading out. They get thinner, thinner, thinner as they go.
Is there a, like, you're a hunter, a big buck isn't as tasty as a little doe. I mean, is it the same thing with mushrooms? As mushrooms get bigger, do they change their texture or taste?
No, the black ones are your best tasting ones. The gray ones, I like the gray ones because they're thicker texture and there's a lot more meat. They're a lot more meatier. The yellow ones they're kind of don't have as much flavor, but they're thinner. They get thinner.
Do you use mushrooms just to add to other dishes, or do you eat them just, hey, I'm going to have some mushrooms and eat just those?
Yeah, just eat mushrooms. I don't ever put them in nothing. Some people do. We kind of lose the flavor,
Well, it is certainly it's a welcome sight in the Michigan woods in the springtime because indeed it is a sign of spring.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's hard to do. Like this weekend, what do? Do you go pier fishing? Do you go steelhead fishing? Do you go to Detroit River walleye fishing, or do you go out and pick some mushrooms?
I know, isn't that a great problem to have?
Right. Then you got to get ready for turkey camp. That's coming up in a couple more weeks.
So, what's going to be your plan for this weekend?
I'll be out looking for some morels.
Yeah. What's the earliest? What's the absolute earliest you've ever found one?
I have a couple pictures, March 15th, March 16th, and then pre-Facebook, pre-phone I own back in the days, it was like mid-90s, late 90s. I picked them February 15th. We were standing on the ice fishing in T-shirts with beer and coolers because it was so warm. And I went out and I found mushrooms. At 60 degrees, 70 degrees.
And if you stayed downstate, I realize if you go north, you can keep picking them. But if you stay downstate where you are, how late in the spring, or will it even go into early summer?
Yeah, you can pick them past Memorial Day down here. I think I've actually picked them just past Memorial Day. They're a little bit harder to find because the vegetation's grown up a lot.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, at that point, there's a lot of other things that you got to be looking around and over and through. Gotcha.
Right. Ticks are bad.
Oh, yeah. I can't forget about those, too. Yeah. Well, listen, Clay, you're a wealth of information when it comes to morels. That's why I call you Michigan's Morel Master, and I appreciate everything you're doing over on your Michigan Morels Facebook page.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
All right. Always a pleasure. Good picking and good fishing and good hunting to you.
Yep. Happy Easter.
Happy Easter to you as well. Clay Edney here on Outdoor Magazine. He is the Michigan Morel Master. And if you want to learn more about morels, go to his Facebook page, Michigan Morels. There are a lot of different morel Facebook pages, but the Facebook page you want that's put together by Clay Edney is Michigan Morels on Facebook, Michigan Morels. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, Nick Green of MUCC checks in. We'll see what's on his mind and their agenda right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Sheboygan on Big Country Gold, WCBY, 1240 AM, 100.7 FM. You can hear us, hear us in Lansing on WILS, 1320 AM. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Escanaba, WCHT, 600 AM, 95.3 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Michigan-based Versa Skins. Just change your skin for the season you're in. And there's a big, big sale going on the entire month at Versa Skins on the website, versaskins.com. That's versaskins.com. Use the promo code HUNT50, and save half off, 50% on everything on the online store. Again, go to the website versaskins.com, use the promo code HUNT50 and save 50%. And that 50%, and that website is versaskins.com, versaskins.com. Change the skin for the season you're in and save half off at versaskins.com. I want to turn our attention now to MUCC, Michigan United Conservation Club. Our advocates, in my opinion, are advocates in Lansing. Nick Green is their Chief Information Officer. Nick, welcome back. How are you?
I'm doing well. We're about 10 days out of convention, so still recovering a little bit, but things are well.
Well, a convention, I mean, that's got to be just a grueling process. It's only 3 or 4 days long, I think, but it's very intense.
It is. It's a couple, 15, 16-hour days for staff. This year we had to start setting rooms up at 6 in the morning, and we weren't done until the hospitality room quit at about midnight. So it gets to be long days, but at the end of it, it's all worth it, knowing the good work we've done.
And it's probably where a lot of the real work gets done, is at that hospitality room.
Well, of course, that's where all the lobbying and all the good conversations happen for the business that is to come the next day.
So what are you guys working on right now, Nick?
Yeah, so currently our legislature is on spring break. We are kind of taking a look at the 16 resolutions we did have passed at convention, seeing if there are some things we might get to work on in the short term. And then we've just kind of rolled out our legislative priorities for the 23-24 session. So that's going to include commercial guiding, commercial fishing, 2 issues that listeners of yours have been probably very in tune with the last few years. We've worked on this for quite a while. And then also bringing up Proposal G and ensuring that its intent is brought back on course with where we think it should be. So those are 3 big priorities. We have some other priorities related to funding, making sure our wetlands are protected. Those are things we'll work on as they pop up. But right now we're just kind of waiting to see what the legislature is going to do when they come back from spring break. Obviously, there's a host of firearm bills they still are working through and on. We are in opposition to all of those. And as they get through those, we will look towards next issues. They do have to tackle a budget as well. So lots going on. We hope they will continue to work through the summer and provide us an opportunity to get some stuff introduced. But lots going on in Lansing. We're busy. We're excited. It's kind of that transition time when the legislature really gets rolling.
Nick, those anti-gun issues proposals coming out of Lansing have me very concerned. With the same party running the governor's office and the legislature, it feels like maybe some of this stuff could go through.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. We're seeing, legislators, we're seeing committee members claim very high public support for that. And agree or disagree, you can't argue that there's a lot of passion out there. So we expect that there will be some bills that are put through to the governor's desk and she signs. What happens afterwards is still a question. We're seeing this play out in other states, whether it's litigation, lawsuits. There are things that likely will pass that won't be tested. I mean, these are conversations we've had with lots of NGOs here in Michigan. So, this is all in the early stages of what could happen, but there are certainly bills that will get to her desk that will probably be signed.
I notice you bring up Proposal G once again. Boy, I thought we'd had this discussion.
This is the new issue. The Department of Natural Resources has asserted that it thinks it has some authorities that the citizens of Michigan and most of the nonprofits and conservation organizations who worked in the arena in the 90s to pass this think that the NRC have and should have. So, these are issues like quotas, geographic boundaries, license structures. So important topics, conversations that we want to have with the DNR and have really kind of a partner approach on this. So as we go to the legislature, we want to make sure that everyone is in the same boat and rowing the right way.
Nick, appreciate the good work there in Lansing. How does somebody join the organization and support the cause?
head to MUCC.org and click join, and you can support us. Then you'll get 4 issues of Michigan Out of Doors each year. So it's a great magazine, 100-page quarterly, and we're proud to produce it.
MUCC.org is the website, MUCC.org. All right, Nick, always a pleasure. We'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, we'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. Nick was in a hurry there, wasn't he, Charlie? That doomp is when somebody hangs up. Got to take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back after the break, this week's Ask Avery segment. Then we'll move into hour number 3 and talk turkey with Greg Abbas. I am very excited about the springtime turkey season. You know, when I was a kid growing up in West Michigan, we didn't have turkeys. And now to see them all around the state, although the turkey numbers are declining, there's no doubt about that. They're on the way down, but there are still enough birds out there to make it a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to that. So in hour number 3, we'll be talking turkey with Greg Abbas. And, of course, we'll wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. That and more coming up yet this week right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Houghton Lake on 98.5 WUPS. You can hear us in Port Huron on WPHM 1380 AM. And you can hear us north of the bridge in the Sioux on News Talk 1400 WKNW. The Ask Avery segment is brought to you each week by my friends from Security Credit Union. Security Credit Union loves to work with outdoorsmen and women, and they can help you with your next outdoor adventure. And what the Ask Avery segment is all about, this is your chance to get involved in the content of the show. You can send me a question that you want me to answer directly, or something you want me to pass along to the folks in DNR or MUCC, or maybe I have access to people that you can't reach. Either way, the best way to get these questions to me is to send me an email to Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com, Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. I used to get a lot of them submitted to me via social media messaging, and that'll work. But I find that there are so many different social media messaging platforms that sometimes your questions get lost, and I don't want them to get lost. So please, if you have a question for me or a question you want me to pass along, send me an email to Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. And if you want in the subject line, just put Ask Avery, and I'll grab it and I'll put it over in a separate file, and I will make sure to see it. That's what Doug Farver did. Doug sent me an email. He says, "Hi, Mike, I have a question for you." Hence the Ask Avery segment. He said, "If there's a baiting ban, then why are food plots allowed? Wouldn't the deer still congregate at the food plot?" He said, "Thanks for taking the time to read my question." Doug, you are asking a question that many, many people across the state have asked for the last several years, and it's a very good question because it's a valid question, and it seems like common sense, doesn't it? Now, let's look at the history of this. I'm going to go back years and years, probably 30 years. Yeah, about 30 years ago. Before that, baiting was allowed in Michigan. And the DNR was asked to look at the concept of whether they were going to continue to allow baiting or not. And they said, no, go ahead, do what you want. So baiting became very prevalent, and that's where the term bait pile came from, because it was common for people to bring truckloads, pickup loads of sugar beets or whatever, primarily sugar beets, to their hunting spot and putting them out in front of them for bait. And it was called a bait pile, and a whole generation of Michigan hunters only knew how to deer hunt over bait. More recently, the DNR, they say because it's concerned about CWD, chronic wasting disease, and they said, bait congregates deer, and deer who are congregated, they have a higher susceptibility to passing along disease, including CWD. So the DNR banned bait completely in the Lower Peninsula, and in the UP, you can bait, but I think there's a 2-gallon limit. Don't quote me on that one. Baiting is allowed under certain restrictions. So that's the history there. Since then, I think the department has learned, in talking with biologists in the DNR, that maybe chronic wasting disease is not the end of the world as had been originally portrayed, and that's good news. But they have no plans to bring back baiting to the Lower Peninsula. Personally, I think that's a shame. Yes, as Doug says, obviously, apple trees will congregate deer. That's a natural. You can hunt over an apple tree. You can hunt under an apple tree. That's not bait, but it is congregating animals. You can hunt over a bean field. That's congregating animals. You can hunt over a food plot. That is congregating animals. What the experts will say is, well, if you have a food plot, they're not as congregated as they would be over 10 square feet of corn on the ground or whatever. Personally, again, I think baiting is good. I think baiting is good for a number of reasons. Number one, it brings animals in so new hunters can see them. It's a lot easier for a kid to get hooked on hunting if they're seeing deer. So it attracts deer. Also, it helps you position deer, or it lets you wait until a deer gets in a good position for a shot, which with bow hunters is very desirable. It can be very hard. Now, baiting is banned, right? But still, a lot of people are doing it. We know that. And it's very hard to attract deer onto your property if the neighbors are baiting. If the DNR truly wants us to kill more deer, as they say they do, I would like to see the bait ban lifted. But I don't think it's going to happen. Doug Farver, appreciate your question. It is a valid question. It's an interesting question, and it's one that gets asked a lot these days across the state of Michigan. Don't look for baiting to come back. My sense is, and I've asked this question to the DNR, will we see the bait ban in the Lower Peninsula lifted? And the answer is we have no plans to do that anytime in the future. If you have a question for the Ask Avery segment, please send me an email to mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. That's mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. In the subject line, please put 2 words, Ask Avery, and ask away, and I will be happy to use your question here on the Outdoor Magazine radio show. Thank you to Doug Farver for asking that question, and thank you to the folks at Security Credit Union for making each week's Ask Avery segment possible. Check them out online at securitycu.org. That's securitycu.org. We'll take a break for the top of the hour. When we come back, we're talking turkey with Greg Abbas, and then we'll talk wild game cooking with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. That's in hour 3 of this week's Outdoor Magazine.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polar Craft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, Brenton USA Hunting Rifles, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to hour number 3 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show right here on the Outdoor Magazine radio network. And so glad to have you along with us on this Easter weekend. I hope you have a chance to get together with your friends and family and remember the real reason for this Easter celebration. And it's not the Easter Bunny, and it's not chocolate eggs. I got nothing against the Easter Bunny, or certainly chocolate eggs, but that's not the reason that, at least in the Avery house, that's not the reason that we celebrate Easter. What a wonderful time of year it is, isn't it? I mean, the Morels are starting to pop in the southern part of the state. Steelhead are running. Walleye fishing's on fire. Early season Great Lakes trolling action. A trout opener in just a couple of weeks. Turkey season starts in a couple of weeks. I'm so excited about that. That's the next thing on my agenda. I absolutely love to turkey hunt. People ask me this all the time. They say, why are you so geeked about turkey hunting? I don't know. It's not that I'm good at it. It's not that I'm an expert at it by any sense of the imagination, because just when I thought I was getting pretty good at turkey hunting, I realized I'm not very good at turkey hunting, and I don't know anything about birds, and I need to work on being more patient. In fact, I've been running through scenarios in my mind last year when I zigged and they zagged, and you know what? The way I hunt, here's what I've decided. I got decoys in front of me. A bird gobbles, I respond, and the bird gobbles back. I'm just going to sit there. He knows I'm there at that point, so to get up and move would be a big mistake, because the minute I move, he's going to go to where I was before. So I need to work on my patience. I also need to pick the brain of people who are real turkey hunting experts. And I don't think there's a bigger turkey hunting expert in our great state of Michigan than Greg Abbas. Greg is a 6-time Michigan turkey calling champion. He guided turkey hunters on public land for many years with a very high success rate. He had an outdoor television show, and he's just an all-around good guy. And he's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Greg, welcome back. How are you?
I'm doing great, Mike. How about yourself?
Again, it's a wonderful time of year, and I am just excited for it.
It is. Spring is my favorite time of year.
Even as hardcore of a deer hunter as you are. That's interesting, Greg. I'm glad to hear that.
I love my deer hunting, but I like spring and I like turkey just a little better.
Is it because you can communicate with the birds? You can have more of a conversation than, grunting back and forth with your bow grunter?
Oh, it's a lot more interactive. There's no doubt. And the nice thing about turkeys is no matter what your style is, whether you're a passive hunter that wants to hunt out of a tent blind from maybe a food plot for turkeys, or you like to get up and run and gun, you could find whatever style you like, and the turkey will accommodate you.
That is an interesting observation, yes, because I'm one of those passive hunters who just sits and waits, and I'll wait them out, but I hunt with a bow. And a lot of hunters are run and gun. They hear a bird and they're after them. Which style do you fall under, Greg?
I'm probably more run and gun, but I'm not opposed to being passive, and it just depends on the bird and what I've scouted out. In fact, there was one case where I was after this one bird on public land for 3 years, and he was so smart. He could tell you what brand of box call you're using, and I knew I wasn't going to get him through traditional means. So one like that, you're going to have to be passive and know his habits and where he hangs out, and be there at the time he shows up.
Was he wise because he was educated by hunters?
Oh, there's no doubt about that. I'm sure he's been called to, he's been shot at, and probably has a few pellets in his hide. But, yeah, they do get educated. And ones like that will gobble every call you make, but they won't come in. They want to see you. And, of course, we can't accommodate them, so it makes it tough.
Calling is...
You have to outmaneuver them.
Yeah, calling, I find calling fascinating because, number one, it's so much fun. To be able to call out to a wild critter and have it respond. I mean, how cool is that?
Oh, that is. And, the deer, they don't talk back and forth with you like a turkey does. It's fun deer hunting and calling them in and that's all fine. But, yeah, the turkey... He gobbles, he tells you where he's at, and then there's a long period of silence when he's moving, and you start getting the head games going in your head, in the mind games, and you start thinking, is he coming? Is he going? And maybe I should call again, maybe I shouldn't call. I mean, it's just so much more interactive and definitely a thinking person's game.
So in general, if you've called and a bird gobbles and you know he's moving, should you call again, or should you shut up and wait and see what unfolds?
No, I'll wait. I don't like to reply to every call. I don't want them to actually pinpoint exactly where I'm at.
Hell to the victors. So less is more oftentimes in calling.
Definitely.
What about that? So we're talking about frequency in calling. What about volume, Greg?
You only want to call loud enough to barely reach him. So you want to be... if his hearing is 4 times better, for example, you're going to want to call out, if he's at 100 yards, for example, you're going to want to call out only 20 yards to a human's hearing to call the proper volume to him. So less calling and lower calling is way better. The problem we run into is most hunters will overcall and they'll call too loud. And either one of them scenarios will cause a gobbler to hang up out of gun range. And it's probably happened to every turkey hunter out there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned
that's why.
You mentioned 100 yards. That's kind of the magic mark, isn't it?
That is. That's where you'll win or lose the bird, is at the 100-yard mark.
If you can get him to commit past the 100 yards, then there's a good chance he's going to come in. Is that what you're saying?
Well, when he reaches the 100 yards, what I'm saying is that's when you really want to do a whole lot less calling, and you actually want to make him believe you're further on than you really are. And there's certain calls that excel within 100 yards, and there's certain calls that excel over 100 yards, and that's why it's important to have those calls, because the one that excels, the one that I use that excels at 100 yards, I'm able to manipulate the volume on it, point the call behind me, and throw the call sound behind and make him think he has another 100 yards to go yet. So as he's closing the distance, he's not even thinking he's anywhere near the point of slowing down when he's been shot.
I bet I know exactly what call you're talking about, too, because I think it's the same one I use.
Probably so.
Is it the old turkey trooper?
It is, yes.
Why is that such a versatile call?
Because of the volume control and the fact that you could hold it in one hand, work it with one finger. It's hard to make mistakes on it. You could be directional. Like I say, if he's coming from the front, I could point the call to the back and throw my sound behind me. If he's coming in off the right flank and I want to pull him across me, I can throw the sound to my left flank and pull him across. And, it's got a rain cover, so when you get those spring rainy days, this is one you can actually use in the rain.
Are you guys still in the turkey call business?
Yes. Yep.
I'm glad to hear that. So which calls are you making these days, Greg? The turkey trooper?
Yeah, we still got the trooper. We've got our Purple Heart box call. We got our Sure Grip pot call. That's glass over slate, and the mouth calls. And it's just my customers won't let me retire, so I got to keep some products up on the website for them.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. Mouth call, I've experimented with a mouth call, and I can get some sounds out of it, but because I like to hunt sitting in a portable blind, and I'm fairly well concealed, I can get away with a little bit of hand movement. So I that's what I'm going for. I'm going for your turkey trooper or your box call or that slate call, because I can get away with it.
You could, and the thing with a mouth call, they have their time and place, and the disadvantage is it's very hard to get them to call soft. And unless you got the right call in your mouth and you're really, really good at it, it's hard to get a mouth call to get the volume low enough when that bird's coming in. So I, too, prefer some of the other calls as opposed to that 100 yards and in.
Do you have to be a good caller to kill a bird?
I say a good caller, not a great caller. A turkey would not win a turkey calling contest because they make mistakes when they call. So anybody can pick up that little push button call, for example, not even practice on it, take it out to the woods, and you can call in a turkey. It's that simple. And a lot of experienced hunters will look at that push-button call and say, well, my skill level's way past that. I've been hunting for 25 years, and they have their favorite call, but they should not let simplicity fool their judgment on a tool that can help them close the deal.
And, Greg, I'm going to ask you to demonstrate those calls after the break, but what you say about turkeys not winning a turkey calling contest, isn't that the case? I mean, we've all been out there in the woods and heard this god-awful sound and think, how did the hunter sneak in on me? And, man, that's an awful sounding bird. And then have a hen walk by and she's the one making the sound.
I've had that happen.
We're talking with Greg Abbas of A-Way Outdoors, the website awayhunting.com, awayhunting.com, talking about springtime turkey hunting. In fact, we're talking turkey. And after the break, I'm going to ask Greg to demonstrate some of these calls and the types of sounds you make with them, when you would use those sounds. It's if you have not springtime turkey hunted, I would encourage you to give it a try, because the first time you hear a bird gobble, you are absolutely hooked. You don't even need to shoot it. The first time you hear a bird gobble, it's going to get in your system like it has for me. More after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Houghton Lake on the Twister 92.1 WTWS. You can hear us over in Ludington on News 97.98, 98.7 WLDN. And you can hear us in Traverse City on WTCM 580 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by the Linwood Beach Marina and Campground. Linwood Beach can be your year-round Saginaw Bay fishing destination and your mid-Michigan tracker and Angler Quest and Polar Craft Boat headquarters as well. And right now they are getting fish, nice fish, big fish, right out in front of Linwood Beach Marina. Check them out online at linwoodbeachmarina.com. That's linwoodbeachmarina.com. Time to start getting out there. Launch ramps are open. The place is ready to rock. linwoodbeachmarina.com. We're talking right now with Greg Abbas. Greg is a very, very well-known figure in the outdoor industry. In fact, I would say he's an icon in the Michigan outdoor, the world of Michigan outdoors. An expert deer hunter. Him and his dad, Fred, are the ones who came up with the Bow Grunner Plus. But they've also, they're expert turkey hunters, very, very good turkey hunters. And when I think about turkey hunting, I think, okay, the different things involved. You know, there's calling, there's scouting, there's decoys. And Greg always will tell me scouting is your number one thing, right? To heck with calling. If you're going to do one thing, make sure you get out and scout your birds.
Definitely. That's what will make a person successful on public land year after year after year. If you find where they're roosted, what direction they go off the roost, they're going to follow those same routines year after year. Now, granted, the public birds get pushed around a little bit more, so they may have a secondary roost. But when you learn where the roosts are from year to year, where the high-pressure roosts are from year to year, what direction they go when they get off the roost, there's no reason why you shouldn't get a bird every year. So
will you set up in the morning on that roost, or you set up away from it?
You mean scouting or hunting?
Hunting. Let's talk about hunting. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Hunting. I definitely set up 100 to 120 yards away from the roost. I don't want to be anywhere near the roost because I want them to feel safe there. I want them to roost there every night. If I bump them from the roost, it's a 50-50 chance if they'll return or not. And I want them to feel good there. So I'll set up 100 to 120 yards away from the roost in the direction they like to travel when they come down.
And then at what point do you make your first call? Do you call to birds on the roost, or do you wait for them to hit the ground?
I do call on the roost, but very sparingly. I won't initiate the calling. I'll wait till he gobbles first to tell me that he's open for business. And once he does that, I'm going to put that little push-button call on a real low-volume setting and just give out some soft tree yelps. That's going to be, anywhere from 4 to 6 soft yelps. And I'm just letting him know that there's a hen roosted down here in the direction he normally likes to come anyway.
Let's hear what that sounds like, Greg.
And that's it. I'm going to put the call down. I'm probably going to wait about 15 minutes, see if he flies down. If he's still up there, I might just do one more series. I don't want to overcall. I just want to let him know where I'm at. If he's with hens and I get those hens jealous, they're going to take him in the opposite direction.
It's a cat and mouse game.
Well, it is. So you always have to listen who's with him, because you're going to hear the hens yelping too. And if there are hens with him, then you really got to take that into mind that they could get jealous. So you don't want to call too much. If he's by himself, I'm not hearing any hens, there's a really, really good chance he's going to come check me out.
And early in the season or early in the morning, there is a good chance he's going to be surrounded by hens.
Especially earlier in the season, yes. As we get later into the third turkey season, and the hens are sitting on the nest, they're less involved in the picture.
That third season, I used to call it the mosquito season, the May season, that can be very effective because hens are sitting on nests, though, can't it?
Oh, exactly right. I like that season. And the birds will travel more. They'll travel in larger circles than they would little outside their territory looking for an active hen. So you can run into birds that you didn't even know of, just doing a little running and gunning. But they are lovesick because there aren't as many hens in the picture. So if you hit it right, the third season can be excellent.
How far will a tom wander during the day?
He could do a mile. So typically, at least earlier in the season, if I know he's at the roosting area and the hen takes him away, usually around the middle of the day, around noon or so, he should be somewhere near where he started. So that's always a good reference. I can't take credit for that one. A friend told me that years ago, and I found it to be pretty accurate.
Do you ever use a gobbler call or a gobbler decoy, or is it always hens?
Well, they're two different things you're talking there.
Yep.
The gobbler call, no, I never use. The gobbler decoy, I will if I'm dealing with tom with hens in a field, and I want to get them jealous. And what I'll do is I'll set up a hen decoy, and I'll take a dowel and make a shorter stake out of it, and I'll set the hen into the ground, to make it look like she's sitting on the ground getting ready to breed. Mm-hmm. And I'll put the Jake decoy just offset of her tail feathers to make it look like he's mounting her. And when that big tom comes onto the field, he's not going to want to tolerate someone else taking one of his women. So it's a good time to use that technique. But otherwise, if I'm unsure, I'll use two hens all the time. But only the Jay and Gobbler decoy under specific situations, because you could actually scare them away. Not every one of them are fighters.
Gotcha.
More of a long beard. He wants to breed, but he may not want to fight.
Gotcha. All right, let's talk about some more calls then. You used your purrs that you would use first thing in the morning. Walk me through some different types of calls, sounds of calls, please, Greg.
Sure. I'm going to use my ready grip here, my steady grip pot call. The yelp is an I love you call. It's probably the one that we're using the most. That's the one going to get his attention. He's going to gobble, and you'll answer maybe about every third gobble. Let him start coming in. I'll also do some excited cuts along with those yelps when he's in the distance. This is cutting. Now throwing some yelps. That will really get him fired up and gobbling and get him excited. And as he starts drawing near, let's say he starts off 300 yards and he reaches maybe 175. So I'll still give out those same calls, but just a little lighter. I'm going to lower the volume and just not go so heavy. When he reaches the 100-yard mark, the push button takes over, and I'm going to put it on low volume and do those purrs. It's a feeding sound. It's a contentment sound. It's nothing that's going to threaten him. He knows that there's a hen feeding in the area, and as he closes the distance, I want to call a whole lot less and not at all if I could help it. Them last 100 yards are very important.
What about a box call? When do you use that?
Now, we found through our studies at my Turkey Tech University, when we used to do the calling experiments, that the box call was the best for long range and windy conditions. You can make any sound a hen turkey can make. In fact, I have one in my hand here if you want to hear it.
Yeah.
But I'll do the cuts and yelps. And you can get really loud on those. They have their advantages and disadvantages. Obviously, any call that takes up both hands, that's the one you want to be using more in the distance. Or if you're using the buddy system and you're the caller and you've got the hunter in front of you by 40 yards or so, then I suppose you could use up your hands. It don't matter. But if you're running and gunning by yourself, you really got to think out which scenarios you're going to use, which calls.
Up until this point, we've been talking about calling to birds who are responding. Once I hear a bird gobble, I feel like everything's okay. I may not get them, but at least I'm in the right spot. What about those days when the birds just aren't talking? To me, those are the hardest to deal with because I keep second guessing myself. How do you deal with a day like that?
Unfortunately, windy, rainy conditions is the turkey hunter's nightmare because he's not talking much and he's got the advantage of eyesight over you. So if you're doing a lot of walking and talking, he may see you because they're not talking much on a windy, rainy day. That's where your scouting really pays dividends because I know where they're roosted. They're still going to follow the same routine. They're just not going to talk as much. Also knowing where they are at certain times of the day will benefit you. So if it's not a windy or if it's not a rainy day and they're just not talking, they're still going to come to dusting bowls as well. Late morning and early afternoon. So that's a great place to set up your tent blind or sit up against a tree and do some passive calling very sparingly and let them just show up.
I'm glad you brought up dusting bowls because I was actually talking with Chet Lohr last week about this. Chet, a mutual friend of yours and mine. But I was thinking on a rainy day, this is maybe very stupid, but on a rainy day, they can't dust, right?
No, they can't. So that's not a technique I use on a rainy day. The rainy day, they still come out into the farm fields and they'll feed all day in those fields. Unless it's just a lot of wind and sideways rain, a bad storm. But just a steady rain, they're going to be out in them farm fields all day. A great place to catch up with them.
And whenever I'm hunting, I always go back to something you told me years ago that I just keep remembering, is a tom turkey has nowhere to go and all day to get there.
It's very true. He's a lot more patient than most of us.
What role does patience play? I mean, like where I'm setting up in a blind over decoys, yeah, I get patience then. But if you're running and gunning, where do you draw the line between patience and saying, okay, I've had enough, I'm going to go after this bird?
When I determine that I've given him enough time to come in and he hasn't, and or if I heard the gobble off in a different location that's getting further, then I'll try to determine what direction he's going and how can I get out in front of him without him seeing me. Those are called runners. I call those turkeys runners, and I run into those on public land a lot. And they're usually on a trail or on the top of a ridge, so I can usually track them down and get out in front of them and let them walk to me.
Greg, always a pleasure. Every time I talk with you, I learn something more. I'll send people to the website, awayhunting.com, awayhunting.com. And as I hit the Michigan springtime turkey woods this spring, I will have your calls in my pocket. So I appreciate your time, Greg. Good luck to you.
You too.
All right. Greg Abbas of A-Way Outdoors, the website, awayhunting.com, awayhunting.com. We'll take a break. Lots more coming up, including Wild Game Chef Extraordinaire and more right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Muskegon on WKBZ. That's 1090 AM. You can hear us in St. Joe on WSJM 94.9 FM. And you can hear us in Saginaw on WSGW AM and FM. That's 790 AM, 100.5 FM. I'm in the studios of WSGW right now, as I am every time I do the show. I'm here with Charlie Rood, doing a wonderful job as always. And Charlie, I look out there now and the weather's, nobody's out there. Nobody's. I don't care how much adoration you have for Charlie Rood. You are not going to brave weather conditions like we have out there right now, with the rain and the wind and the lightning and the thunder. So next week, Charlie, we'll get a good crowd out there next week. I know we will. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Reader Landscaping. Reader can take care of your lawn and property because it's your nature and our nurture. Let Reader create an outdoor getaway in your backyard, as they have for me. Lawn maintenance and projects. I have used the folks at Reader. I shouldn't say used. I have worked with the folks at Reader for both. And if you need help maintaining your lawn or property, Reader can certainly do that. But if you have a project, I'm talking about a landscaping project, maybe it's a water feature. I don't care what it is. Is it landscaping? Is it mulch? Is it boulders? Is it an egress window? Is it a pool? I mean, the folks from Reader can help you take care of just about anything, and they are experts at converting your backyard, your side yard, your front yard, your piece of property into a real oasis, a getaway, someplace you want to come home to. Check them out online at readerlandscaping.com. That's readerlandscaping.com. I always enjoy my conversations with Greg Abbas. Just a nice guy and very, very knowledgeable, very knowledgeable. Expert when it comes to deer hunting, expert when it comes to turkey hunting. And also, it's something we didn't get a chance to talk about much this time, at all this time. He's also, because of his career in the outdoors, in the outdoor industry, he's got an outdoor invention consulting service that he provides. And I think this is very cool. And as hunters and anglers, you spend a lot of time out there, and, when the fishing's slow, you're looking around saying, okay, how can I improve what's going on here? If you're sitting in a tree stand or in a blind, you've got hours sometimes waiting, and you're thinking, okay, what can I do? What piece of gear, what gadget would make this a more productive, effective, or comfortable situation? And you think, okay, well, how do I bring this to market? Well, Greg has that service, and he has successfully helped many outdoor entrepreneurs bring their product to market, or bring it to a place where it's viable, best case scenario, to sell it to a bigger company and just do it that way. Anyway, his website, awayhunting.com, that's awayhunting.com. I am excited about the upcoming turkey season. I got a new crossbow sighted in the other day. I took my scope off my old crossbow and put it on the new crossbow. I took the scope that came with the bow off it. Not that there was anything wrong with it, but I had a Vortex Crossfire 2 scope that I absolutely love. And so I put that in the new bow. But the thing about this is you don't sight it in at 20 yards. You sight it in at 40 yards. And then you go out to 80 yards and you shoot at your target. Now, I am never going to shoot at a game animal at 80 yards. Don't get me wrong. I wouldn't do that. The bow will perform to that level, but I'm not going to do it because too many bad things can happen in the time that arrow is in the sky. So you sight in at 40 yards, you go back to 80 yards, and you shoot. And if your arrow is low, they're not bolts, they're arrows. Bolts don't have veins or feathers. Arrows have veins and feathers. So if your arrow is low, if you have an adjustable scope like this is, you turn down the magnification, which is also turning down the speed adjustment on the scope. If your arrow is hitting high, you turn it up. And what this does is it brings everything in alignment, your reticles, your crosshairs, and your reticles. So, okay, I'm zeroed in at 40, but if I go to 60, then my 60-yard crosshair, my 60-yard reticle is dead on. And it makes it much easier, and you're not saying, okay, do I have to fudge between these? Well, if you get a critter at 35 yards, you still are, but it's much, much better. I've thought about putting one of those very expensive range-finding laser Oracle scopes on there, but it's like, I can't quite figuratively or literally pull the trigger on that one yet. It is Easter weekend again. My wish for you is that you have a blessed Easter weekend. You get to spend some time with your friends, with your family, and please keep in mind the real reason for this Easter season. And it's not chocolate eggs, it's not the Easter bunny, it's not Easter baskets, but it's something more. It's about an empty tomb. It's about salvation. It's about a hope for the future. And to me, that's what helps me get through this world today. Because when you look around, it's pretty clear that a lot of things in this world are going the wrong direction. And I feel much better. I feel more calm, and I feel more confident knowing that I have a belief in something more. And this Easter exemplifies that. So I would ask that you would keep in mind the real reason for this Easter season. My name is Mike Avery. My website is MikeAveryOutdoors.com. That's MikeAveryOutdoors.com. The email address is Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. If you want to get in touch with me, send me a question for the Ask Avery segment. Have a problem with something I've said, something you'd like to hear me talk about, I'd love to hear from you. Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. When we come back, we'll check in with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar, and I think this week he has another recipe. I'm not sure what it is, but I know it'll be good, and we'll find out after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. Welcome back to Outdoor Magazine. My name is Mike Avery, and I'm so glad to have you along with us. It is a pleasure. It is an honor. It is a blessing to sit at this microphone for 3 hours each week talking about something that I love. The history and tradition of the outdoor lifestyle here in the great state of Michigan, hunting and fishing and shooting and trapping. Now, the ultimate reward sometimes on these adventures, and I'm not saying you have to catch fish or harvest animals to have a successful outdoor adventure. But sometimes it's a nice bonus. And when you get that fish or wild game, then you want to cook it up and get the most out of it. You want to provide the best meal possible for your friends and family. Nobody knows that better than wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar, and he's with us once again. David, welcome back. How are you?
Wet and wild today, Michael.
Wet and wild. Isn't that the case? Hey, I forgot to tell you, too, we had our official wrap-up meeting for our Trinity Monitor Wild Game Dinner and Auction. This is the big event that you catered back in early March. And we had a record year, Dave. It was the most successful event we have had yet, and I want to personally thank you for all your help in making that happen.
Wow, it seemed like everything went so smooth, and all your auction items and raffle stuff went really good. I think everybody got a pretty good deal, and you guys made out like bandits. Thank you.
Yeah, it was good all the way around, and we will do it next year. I think the date is March 2nd of 2024, and of course we want to have you involved. But in the meantime, how about a recipe, Dave?
Well, we got a pan-seared walleye almondine. We did this for the show, oh my God, probably 20-some years ago. So this is going to be for 4 portions, so you need 4 8 to 10 ounce fillets per person, or nice large pieces, if you're catching the big guys there, the big girls, I should say. And you want a boneless and skinless, half a stick of butter, juice of a lemon, 1 cup of white wine, 2 tablespoons of parsley chopped relatively fine, 1 to 1 1/4 cups of toasted almonds. You can put them in your oven for a while and toast them, or you could use them just like that because you're going to put this in oil and saute it. 2 beaten up eggs, flour to dredge and mix with the almonds, and some olive oil. So in a blender, take about half of the almonds, maybe even a little bit more, and you want to do a fine consistency with it. Not too fine like flour, but just chunk it up, and then mix about 1/4 cup of flour in with it. And so you want to skin the walleye. In the bigger ones, you're going to skin it kind of deep, splatter a line out, and remove the line of pin bone, which is real easy to do. You just go right along it on each side with a real sharp fillet knife and remove that so that you don't have any bones. Then dredge it in the flour, then in the beaten up eggs, and then roll it in the almond flour mix. And you want to really watch this because almonds burn real fast. And so you want to add a little more amount of olive oil than you normally would because you don't want this to burn. In a medium hot pan, take up 1 piece of whole almond and put it in the oil before you place your fish in it. And if it sizzles up real good, it might be a little too hot. You want to cool it down. So place the fish skin side up, turn it over when golden brown. It might only take a minute or so, depending on how hot you do this. You can do this on the stove if you want. You can cover it up, finish baking, or you can place it in a a baking sheet and put it in the oven uncovered for about 8 to 10 minutes is all. You don't want to overdo this, but you want them almonds nice and crispy. So while that's in the oven, take a paper towel and wipe out the same pan. You can use it. Add the lemon juice, the white wine, the butter, a portion of the parsley that you've chopped up. Reduce it down till it's thick and creamy. And that should take about the same amount of time that your fish is in the oven. So spoon some of the sauce down on the plate and then lay each fillet right on top of that. And if you have any almonds left, you could sprinkle that on top a little bit. And a little bit of parsley will make this look just great because you got parsley in that sauce and then topping it with parsley. It's going to bring that eye appeal right up, like right in your face. Thank goodness.
It sounds wonderful, David. And as I'm thinking about, a fish, cooking fish, and the fact that you say they will continue to cook after you take them off the stove, that's one of the things you told me a couple of weeks ago that I made into our Outdoor Magazine minutes for this week. Did you get a chance to hear those yet?
No, I did not.
I'm going to send them to you because I think it turned out really well. Charlie here in the studio said he thought you did a really good job on that as well. So I'm going to send them off to you.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you.
All right, and then I will give you a call a little bit later here once I get wrapped up in the studio. All right, buddy?
All righty. I just wanted to talk to you about your mail.
All right, sounds good. Wild Game Chef Extraordinaire, Dixie Dave Minar, a big part of the Outdoor Magazine show, as are you. Because honestly, if you weren't listening, if you weren't listening to the radio show, listening to the podcast version of the show, or the podcast that I produce for some of my partners, or following me on social media, there would be no reason for me to do this. I would encourage you to check out my Facebook page. I'm also on Instagram and YouTube as well. Don't forget about our Behind the Mic segments every Wednesday morning at 8:45. And, of course, our Wednesday night live, Wednesday nights at 7 o'clock. The website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. My email address, Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Again, my wish for you this weekend is to have a blessed Easter, you and your family. Hope you get a chance to get together. Enjoy some good food, some good fellowship, and please remember the real reason for this season. It's not Easter bunnies. It's not chocolate eggs. It's an empty tomb, salvation, and a hope for the future. My name is Mike Avery, and I'll talk to you next time right here on Outdoor Magazine.